When you saw Knausgaard in this video's title, I bet you thought I was going to talk about my struggle. But the truth is, I DNF'd it. It wasn't that I didn't like my struggle, it's that it reminded me of Marcel Duchamp putting a toilet in an art gallery. It was interesting to think about, but the actual experience wasn't that great. And after reading 2 volumes, I felt like I understood it and could sit on either side of a table, arguing that yes, this is the most important literary work of the past 25, 30 years, or this is a point that just doesn't need to be made. But somebody who likes just a little hint of the absurd or the divine in a book, I was really excited about his next series. Now, Knausgaard has been fairly emphatic that these 3 books can be considered separately. For me, that feels insane. They have a lot of the same characters, they take place over the same compressed unit of time. And while Knausgaard's not a place you go for closure in the traditional sense, there is a hint at the end of the last book that things are wrapping up. The first book, The Morning Star, charts the lives of a few characters. They're not very likable, they're not very interesting. They're very caught up in going out and getting drunk, or just trying to figure out their relationship with their spouse, or just trying to figure out how they're going to get through their day. But on this day, something special happens. A new star rises in the sky. And during this time when this star is shining, it appears that maybe heaven and hell are just full. No one else can die. Now, of course, none of these characters understand what's happening at the time, and they're too consumed with their own petty lives to even really care about it. But the reader sees it, so the reader has a special opportunity to consider the mundane reality of everyday life in the face of some sort of divinity or something special that is going on around us, something that maybe we're too tied up in our petty lives to really see or understand. I ended this novel in a pretty conflicted place. I loved Knausgaard's writing. I loved the idea of the Morning Star. For some reason, he puts the end of the novel in the hands of his most boring character so that that character can write a not very interesting essay about the fact that basically every society has some sort of religion. But that made me even more excited when I found out that a second book in this series was coming out. And even though the author was emphatic these were 2 separate books, I was eager to pick it up and figure out what else happened underneath the Morning Star. The title, From the Wolves of Eternity, comes from a quote that no matter how much you tame a wolf, it will always yearn for the forest. And in the same way, no matter how much you domesticate a human, we are all wolves standing at the edge of the forest of eternity. Like the first book in this series, The Wolves of Eternity traces the lives of a few slightly more interesting characters as they start to investigate their relationships to their parents and each other, especially 2 characters who realize that they might share a father. And again, the Morning Star is seen super obliquely, maybe even less than in the first volume. Just in terms of, hey, was that a knock on the inside of a coffin? What is this giant star that's risen in the sky? Now, I wish I could say that, hey, the 3rd book in this series, The Third Realm, brings it all together, but that wouldn't be true to life, would it? Yes, this book does bring us back to many of the characters in the first 2 novels and tries to put them together in a way that you can see their lives intersecting. But there's not a ton of closure. There's just a hint at the end of the book that the Morning Star is starting to recede. And will life just go back to normal, or knowing what we know now, will mankind be changed forever? Now, you can tell by the fact I have 2 hardcover versions of this that I loved it. Like the day these were coming out, I was buying them, I was inhaling them. That being said, I can't say I was always loving them. They are purposefully frustrating. They defy our expectation of any sort of closure or any sort of moral. In fact, I think a really good counterpoint for Knausgaard in the Morning Star series is John Dos Passos and the USA Trilogy. Because like Knausgaard, Dos Passos was trying to say something meaningful, to try to explain what it felt like to be a citizen in a certain place at a certain time. And where Knausgaard surrounded his characters with this little hint of the divine, this little hint of the absurd that was floating out there beyond them, Dos Passos surrounds his with the cacophony of modern life as it was in the first part of the 1900s. Like Knausgaard, Dos Passos sets up a number of characters, some of who are related to one another and some of whom are not, and tries to trace their lives as they flow like fireworks across America. And then interrupting and surrounding these people's stories, he lays in headlines from different newspapers, potted biographies of historical figures written in the poetic style of like a Walt Whitman, and even this series called The Camera Eye, where he just grabs random people off the street and shares a couple pages about the experience of their life in America at this time. So it's similar to Knausgaard in the way the characters are treated. It's similar to Knausgaard in the way that they're surrounded by something that is living just outside their comprehension. And it's also like the Morning Star books in the way that Passos refuses to bring closure to all of his characters. If you read all 3 books in this series, there are some scenes at the end where you figure out what happened to characters. There's one specific party that has experienced from a number of views. I'm fairly sure that about 5, 6, 7 of the characters are at that party in different ways, even if they don't know each other. But there's no answer to how these people began and how they ended. Instead, you see them shooting upward into America, and then they almost disappear into the firmament of this growing country. Now, on a writer's level, there's no question that Passos was a better constructor of sentences. But you have to remember that Knausgaard wasn't trying to construct beautiful sentences. He was trying to construct boring sentences that said something about what it feels like to live in modern times. Whereas Passos was almost wildly experimental, trying different ways to write, almost ferocious, trying to find a story that he felt told the American story. Because at the end of the day, the main character in this book is not any one person. There's no one who you realize, oh, the whole time, this has been the protagonist of this book. The protagonist of this book is America itself at this place in time. David Foster Wallace said something like, every writer is a realist in the sense that he or she is trying to say something about how the world really feels to them. Knausgaard was trying to do that. Passos was trying to do that. And my own attempt to do this was the Nihilisticats. The Nihilisticats follows a couple of core characters in today's modern internet-driven culture. And then around these 2 people who are trying to get some sort of closure or comfortableness with their own identities and their own lives, so they're surrounded by podcast scripts, insane conspiracies, federal agents, and an offer from America that everyone, if they don't like their identity, can just start over. The Nihilisticats was named the Pop Culture Novel of 2024 by Indie Reader. If you like books like this, I hope you'll check it out. And thank you for watching.